Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Laughter with your host, Glenn Ambrose.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. So this is a part 2 with Michelle Miller because we're talking so much and the hour flew by. So I decided to have her back on for a part 2. So let's bring her on.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, everyone.
I hear you. I don't see you yet.
Oh, I see me.
Do you? No, well,
I see us both.
Well, let's hope that it's my computer. So let me just see if there's any other settings. No, that's solo layout. You know what? I'm just going to take a chance and remove you and bring you right back on.
All right. It says everyone can see and hear you.
Oh, there you are. Yeah, you're up. All
Better
right.
Watch what I say.
Yeah, that was magic. You manifested yourself to come right on. So yeah, we've known each other for a while, and so I kind of had a feeling that it might go like this, but man, we started talking and there is so much to cover in this subject. There's so many directions that you can go, and like it just really felt like the conversation was incomplete to me last time. So I was like, there's just so much juicy stuff. Let's get Michelle back on and talk more about your book. So because I would feel horrible if I screw up somebody's title. What's the title of your book again?
Yeah, it's Heart First, a female psychedelic call to adventure.
There we go. So
well, and what you're saying is true. The first time I showed what I was writing to an editor, he was like, okay, but what is this? Is this a how-to, travel or live life on your own terms? Is it self-help? Is it spirituality? Is it like a drug-induced memoir? And I'm like, yes, it's all of this.
Yes. Yeah. I'd like to say yes to all of that. Yeah. Which is cool, which I think is, I think it's, I think that that's beautiful because a lot of times we try to label things too much and put them in a box. And just the fact that you kind of can't label it and it's a little bit of everything, like that's what makes it so unique, So I think that that's what makes it special.
Well, I think people have an issue with me like that in general because by trade, I'm a yoga instructor and massage therapist. And eventually I did find my way to a career in wellness. And in Panama, my husband and I owned a small hotel and a restaurant and wellness facility and all this. And I just never fit in anybody's box of, so are you spiritual? Are you a businesswoman? Are you, I know you're spiritual, Glenn, in your circles, but people haven't really known what to do with me.
Yeah. They found a box pretty quickly for me. But yeah, we all have to find our own way, and it's I think that's part of what we're going to talk about today is during your journey, you took the unconventional route. You went out and you were experimenting and playing and enjoying and having fun with psychedelics. And during that journey, you were opening up spiritually and finding yourself along the way. And then, at some point, that there was, like, we touched on surrender. So, I mean, in your journey, like, what aspects of surrender did you have to finally come to? And what were the results of those surrenders, or the surrender? You know, sometimes it's one gigantic one, and sometimes it's multiple, depending on the person. I don't want to put you in a box.
Yeah, there was multiple surrenders going on for sure. Multiverse of surrenders. So, well, first off, I remember I shared with you that I was really afraid and I didn't know what was happening to me as I was having this awakening. And basically, I stopped like worrying about it so much and just surrendered and accepted and that as part of my life. Okay, I don't know what exactly it is, because you also asked me, oh, when did you figure all this out? And I never really answered your question because I never really did. It's a series, so it's going to continue.
Yeah, just like the rest of our lives.
Exactly. But I basically just stopped worrying about it so much, and just accepted. And then throughout my journey, of course, there were obstacles traveling with no money and no plans. And a lot of times it was difficult. And at a certain point, I had to admit that money might come in handy or I would have to kind of play the physical reality game. I would have to find a way to, like we said, incorporate or integrate some of this, or how to even survive on the material plane. And that's been a struggle for me. It's an ongoing struggle, like to be like super spiritual. It's really hard for me to function in the material world if I'm too far into, and it's not even psychedelics anymore. It's like my walks and my yoga and my self-care and my conversations with my friends and moon circles. And then I'm like, oh, I have to, pay the bills or do the accounting, and so eventually just surrendering to that stuff too, of like, yep, it's all part of it.
It is. It's all part of it. And it's, this is funny. I didn't know that this was going to come up in this way, but I was just talking with somebody yesterday, and I was talking about doing an intro video for a new platform I'm launching soon. And I explained to them, I said, I'm not real good at doing videos where I need to say specific things. And, I'm on video all the time. I'm talking all the time. I'm talking to people. I'm doing podcasts. I'm doing all this stuff. So like, you wouldn't think that I would have a problem with that, but I do, because it's two different, to me, it's two different aspects. Like when I'm talking, people don't know, but there's a certain feeling that I'm in. There's a certain space that I'm in, and it's a spiritual space. And even now, when I'm letting the conversation go wherever it goes organically, and it's very natural to me, even if outsiders don't necessarily pick up on that or know that's what I'm doing, that's what I'm doing. So for me to then be on video, I'm good, I'm fine. But then all of a sudden, if I have to say something specific, then I have to disengage from the spiritual flow, engage my brain, remember what I need to say, and then go back and start saying it. And it's like, it's, for me, it's such a different gear, the spiritual gear and the mind gear.
Oh, exactly. And that's what I'm saying. Like when I start talking about spiritual things, I actually feel like my body's lifting kind of, and I get a little buzzy, and then I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. And I think this is one of the most important things that's going on in the world right now, I think, because everybody's finding this spiritual, there's a huge spiritual shift. So people are opening up to spirituality in a lot of ways, and they're doing lots of spiritual things, and they're learning about spirituality and going to sound healings and drum circles and all these events that are all over the world and wonderful and all this stuff. But it's like we also need to integrate that spirituality into our human world, because we're not one or the other. We're a spiritual being having a human experience, and we have to integrate those two. So your experience was, really opening up spiritually so much, and then you're like, uh-oh, yeah, money is actually a thing, and that they use in this world.
Yeah.
And like
I got
need
forced to agree to it too.
right. And that's how, we come in different ways. I mean, sometimes that's what it is. It's like you got to be forced to agree with it, right? But other people come in a different doorway, and it doesn't matter what doorway you come in, we end up at the same place. Because like a lot of people get very judgmental when rich people get spiritual. They're like, oh yeah, must be nice, all this stuff. It's like, it's just a different doorway. Some people make the money first and then find out that happiness isn't there, and then they come into their spirituality. Some people come into their spirituality first and then go, oh crap, I actually need money to live too. And there's many spots in between too. So when you said something to me, like when you actually did start surrendering to this truth that you needed money, I mean, you mentioned doing things that brought you joy. So, how did that, which I think is gigantically important. So I want to get, your perspective on that, how it worked for you.
Yeah, and that was really essentially what I was searching for. It was like, well, I didn't know what I would go to college for. And I felt like my creativity was being completely stifled in that environment, or I was just being forced to take like general education classes when I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so that was a lot of my search. I was just like, what else is there? What do I want to do? And what I was interested in was travel, was natural health. I had been a vegetarian since I was like 16, alternative medicine, massage, crystals, weed, herbs. and eventually I found massage therapy, which really blended all of that, all my interests in one, and I was able to travel and take it with me.
There you go. So that's it. So you found your niche that was in alignment with the way you wanted to live and what brought you joy.
Yeah, and I felt even with my like woo-woo spirituality as well, because I knew that I wanted to do something that wasn't harming the planet, that was helping other people. And then later found out, oh, that's right livelihood. That's a Buddhist principle.
Right. Yeah. And it's, this is what's cool when you kind of like, so I'll use, of course, your story as the example. Like when you come in and it feels like you're surrendering, if there's something we have to do, not like, oh, I have to go to work as an accountant in an office with a jerk as a boss. That's not a have to. That you tell yourself you have to. I'm talking about really have to, like, find some way to bring income in. Everybody has to do that, So when you came in that door, it's kind of like, the rebellious spirit. We're caving, like caving into the man and all this.
Yeah,
crap.
defeated. I felt a little defeated in a way.
Right. And that's, I think that's natural when you're coming in that door to feel defeated, like, oh man, I guess I have to get. But then when you get to the real truth of it, when like we're here on an experiential plane, this world is an experiential world. It's action based. It's movement based. We're here for something. So you found a way to add value to this world and not detract value from this world, like, from the earth and things like that. So you found a way to bring in an income that was in alignment with your values, with your moral values, with the way you functioned. And I think that that's, very important for people to understand. Once you do it that way, it's not actually caving. It might feel like caving at first, but then once you understand like the Buddhist principle, your livelihood, and adding value to the world, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, this wasn't a surrender. This is just an extension of my existence here.
Yeah, you can look at it as mastering something as well. And that's like rich people. Maybe they haven't learned certain spiritual lessons, but they've learned how to master the material world in a certain extent, or abundance or manifestation. So
right, that's it. They've learned certain skills. No life is wasted. I think this doesn't get talked about very often, and I think it's important. It's, there's so many roads to come in on, and they all end up at the same place, following our joy and having a well-balanced life. And it doesn't matter which one you master first. It can be of benefit. If you master abundance first, and then, you lean into spirituality after, great. Some people do it very evenly. I mean, I think those people are probably rare. Usually, people usually pick one road or another. But
yeah, we all have a role to play too. I mean, we were talking about the spiritual bypassing and whether or not staying in your feelings, you're getting stuck or not. And actually, I get torn sometimes so I'm someone who, around that age at 16, I turned off all my media. And so I don't pay attention to what's happening in the world. Normally, I haven't for almost 30 years. And there's some people who are like, they need to feel that. They want to be aware of people's suffering, and that's important to them. And I understand it. And I think it is important that we all have that understanding or that empathy or that awareness on a certain level. But I'm more of the no, I would rather not, because it affects me actually pretty deeply, I think.
Yeah.
To where then I become stressed out or focused or on that or negative. And it's no, I'd rather turn it off and be somewhat aware that of course there's suffering going on in the world, but hold space for joy and love and more live in that ignorance is bliss vibration. And there is no right or wrong. Like you were saying, we all kind of have a role and we're all kind of playing our part. And it's important that, that some people do focus on that suffering and they're trying to do their best to heal whatever's happening.
Well, and that's the point. I mean, I honestly don't see any reason, somebody can yell at me for this. I'm sure they will, but I don't see any reason of being aware of all the misery that's happening on the planet. I mean, you're way out in Panama. Have you heard of COVID?
Oh, of course.
Right. So I'm in the mountains of the Dominican Republic. You can't escape it. We are so connected that we know what's going on in the world. It's just, I learned many years ago, when I opened up spiritually, I was like a raw nerve in certain areas. I cared very deeply. And I, like a lot of people on the spiritual path, I have a large heart and I actually give a crap. And sometimes, the way I talk, it sounds like I don't give a crap, and I do. It's just, I had to learn what to do with that very early on because I was going to drive myself crazy. And what I looked at is when something comes across my path, I put it on my plate and I look at it and I just go, okay, now can I put any energy towards making this situation better? Energy in the form of money, time, anything.
Love, meditation.
Meditation. Can I write an article about it? Do a podcast? Is there something that I can and am capable and willing to do to make this situation better in some way, to add good energy towards it in a healing way? And, you know, a lot of times in my life, the answer is no. I mean, there's too much. I have a life too, you know, and of course I help in certain situations when I'm capable of it. But there's a lot of times, like I'm not, you know, when I was a single dad collecting food stamps, trying to start a business, I wasn't able to donate money to cancer research. You know, I didn't have any money. I didn't have time to go volunteer somewhere. So like, if there's nothing I can do actively to help, then it goes off my plate, because there is no point in suffering. There is no point for me sitting around going, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. It's so sad that this is happening. That doesn't help anybody. I can never feel bad enough to help somebody else. You know, all it does is add more negative energy, if anything. I'm not benefiting anybody. I'm sure as heck not benefiting myself. You know, so that's why I take it off my plate. Now, I mean, there are moments when there's big stuff. Like I found a nice balance with this, with the Dalai Lama and Bishop Desmond Tutu, because they're two spiritual leaders that the people they are leaders of have gone through enormous atrocities, you know, and they're the two of the happiest people I've ever seen on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when I read their latest book a little while ago, and they really dove into what compassion means to them, and understanding that we are all a part of, you know, and it's okay to cry for those people. It's okay to, you know, to have compassion and feel feelings, and to cry and feel horrible about the atrocities that are happening all over the world. It's okay. But then you need to move on. Like that's just a purging. That's a connecting with other people, knowing that you're part of. And compassion is really connecting with other people. But it's not about, you know, when that half-hour cry session is over, they don't walk through their lives in misery. They're constantly laughing, you know, and they're putting energy into making the world a better place, but they're joyful in their lives, because they understand walking around, you know, with a sack filled of sorrow, it doesn't benefit anybody, you know.
Because I resisted money and the system for so long, I've had to do a lot of work around it. And the whole thing, it kind of speaks to that, well, if I have, somebody else doesn't type mentality. And I know that the spiritual community has gone both ways, right? It was like spirit, not money, people over profit. And now there's like a whole abundance movement of like, no, just because you have doesn't mean someone else doesn't. The world is abundant. And now we've come into like this privilege, kind of a different mentality. It's interesting. Like, we are all evolving. We really are.
Yeah.
And it seems like, I mean, wow, there's some masterminds thinking of new systems, and we know there is enough for everyone. It's just distribution, right?
Yeah, and I mean, we even have the capability of distribution too. It's just we don't, you know, like nobody's interested in solving the problems. That's the problem. This is why I put my hope in the spiritual shift that's happening. Because to me, that's the only thing that's going to change anything. It's the way we look at things. And that's a grassroots movement that I see tons of evidence of. You know, we're working towards this, but as it gets bigger and more people believe that the way we're living is absurd, then we're going to demand more from our governments and, you know, and the businesses and things like that. Because I mean, at the end of the day, we are in control. I mean, you can't have 1% control 99%. It's just, you know, the only way you can do that is if the 99% believe you can. which is where we are now.
Exactly.
Our belief systems are changing. We are expanding. We're seeing things differently. We are understanding that there is enough. We are understanding that we haven't put enough effort into distribution. So we're getting that. And if we just worry about ourselves, as we get that, I don't care if the government gets it. Because eventually, if we all get it, we're just going to hit the brakes and go, hey, you may go, or somebody, that's got billions will go like, hey, I'll distribute it. Go, okay, thank you.
Well, I think people are really feeling the environmental time crunch now.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's going to be a huge motivator of like, okay, there has to be major changes.
Well, and I think generationally, where the kids nowadays understand that so much. Like I work with kids sometimes, and you look at a kid and you go like, yeah, so would you work for a company that does that pollutes the environment? And a lot of them are like, no, it's absurd. I mean, like today, like you mean in this day and age, like they might be a little bit ignorant about how rampant it is out there, but it's because it's not even part of their reality. They think that type of thinking is absurd. And as we have more of these people that think like that into the workforce, and the spiritual shift keeps happening. And it's like, I mean, I've seen so many shifts of this stuff, like in the last 18 years, and then in the last 10 years, and then the last 5 years, and in the last year, in the last 3 months, I have literally seen specific changes in philosophies, like you were talking about.
No, it's true. Like when we were being brought up, we were told that you got to make a lot of money to be successful. It didn't really matter how you did it. You could work for a huge oil company. You could work for whatever. And what you're saying is, yeah, absolutely true. Is like kids are like, wait, no, why would I do that?
The consciousness is changing. And I think that's what really gives me hope, not only generationally, but like with the younger kids, but then in our generation and even the generation before us a little bit, that, people are waking up and going, oh, wait a minute. And I think like that's how large social change takes place. Like a lot of people will look at a spearhead of a movement, like, oh, Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, or Martin Luther King did this. And they were the spearhead, and we needed them to step up and do what they did. But that's not what actually changed. What changed was how people thought about those subjects. And, same with women's rights, and same with gay rights. Every time we've had social change, it's not really what you see on the news that did it. That's the culmination of the consciousness of the people collectively. People are having tea with their friends going, I think women should have equal rights. They were having these tea parties back in the 50s and 60s before any of this stuff took off. Yeah, this is crap, and all of a sudden more and more people started thinking like that. And then when enough people think like that, just energetically, behind the scenes, nothing is even being done yet. Then the movement is birthed. And then
and that's what the collective consciousness is, right? Like the 100th monkey.
That's it. So that's how all social change has taken place, in my opinion. And I think that's how social change is going to take place again. It's just even now we're connected globally through the internet, and, you're in Panama, I'm in the DR, and we're reaching people literally all over the world. So like the world has shrunk and we're more connected. So it's like, yeah, we can all share ideas. We can all shift our consciousness to bring in a better world. And once we do, the powers that be aren't going to be able to do anything about it.
When you were talking earlier, too, I was just thinking, well, we have so much to integrate now, though. Like you were talking about doing your video and how you have to talk about something specific. And, I wrote this book and I want to put my message out into the world in this fun, entertaining way. But I am having to do videos. I'm having to have a social media. I'm having to be a videographer and a graphic designer and like all these different things. And because we all have this opportunity and all these, tools at our fingertips, we're all kind of forced to have to learn them and integrate them into what we're doing. It is a lot. It really is.
Yeah, it is a lot. And I mean, I got to a place where I stepped back from a lot of that stuff. I mean, I do what I have to, like, recording this right now. But as far as, doing the talking, I'm fine with. But, pressing the buttons and and running it, that's the type of stuff, fortunately, this platform is very easy. So I can handle it. But I pulled back on a lot of that stuff once I got to a certain level with my business, because I don't enjoy that. When I was creating my business, I enjoyed it because it was creation. I enjoyed creating my website. I enjoyed creating all kinds of stuff. And
that's another thing, website and emails
and it was a challenge. And when I was supposed to be doing that stuff, it felt good to meet those challenges. And then now I'm like, I'm, been there, done that, bought the t-shirt. I don't really like doing that stuff anymore. So I lean away from it.
For somebody who wants to do their own thing and be an entrepreneur and put themselves out there in the world, and there's a lot of people doing coaching and the microdosing and the, all and podcasting and all this stuff, and they've got a great message, but man, you have to be everything all at once to really put it through a lot of times.
Yeah. And I mean, it's dependent on, like, I did everything myself. So I know that's the door I came in. I know most people don't do as much as I did myself, because they'll be like, oh, well, I'll have somebody make my website, or I'll have somebody do this. And I think whenever you can do that, I think it's wonderful. Like I said, this is the direction I'm leaning to more now, later on. But like, it's, it's like, I think there's certain, so this is kind of cool. I didn't know we were going to do this. Like, I believe that anything that works consistently is based in spiritual law. So like, if you look at business, like, one of the tenets of business is they say, if you want a successful business, hire people that are really good at what you don't want to do. Do what you're good at, and then hire a bunch of people for the stuff that you don't want to do, that are really good at doing those things, and build your team. And that's how you do it, and it works in business, and it works consistently. Why? Because it's in alignment with spiritual law.
Yes.
Spiritual law. This is the reason that we have this innate desire to connect with one another and form communities, is because we can do more together than we can do separately, because different people are good at different things.
And if you're doing what you're passionate about and what you enjoy, then you're following your heart. And yeah, it's just starting out. I know a lot of people can't afford to pay somebody to do that stuff.
Yeah.
But, this is kind of cool. So part of Heart First being a passion project, and that's kind of how I'm seeing it, of just like, this is a passion project. I've wanted to share my story and write it down for a long time. So I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it out there at a really reasonable rate. And I'm agreeing to dedicate 10% of everything I make just right out the door. Like, let's not talk about expenses. I don't want to talk about expenses. Just right out the door, 10%. Towards something that's in alignment with Heart First. So something that's helping the planet and helping other people. I haven't had time to narrow in on what that cause is going to be, and it may change, periodically. But I'm looking at doing something here in Panama with some of the laws around like chemical farming and pesticides. because in one of the mountain communities not far from here, where most of the produce is grown, they're using glyphosate and some of like the worst chemicals. And there's a high cancer rate and there's a high birth defect rate. And so I was put in touch with a couple of groups that are doing things. And so that's exciting too. And I'm like, well, let's see how this all flows too, of just putting more behind it, putting more momentum, putting more intention.
Yeah, and that's good, because people, not only do people, when they're getting your book, they know that they're, putting energy in the form of money in this situation towards something that's going to be bettering our planet and humanity in general, so I mean, that's important right there, and it's good for you. And I think like I have the same feeling. Like, I've always been interested in philanthropy. It may have even been before I started my business. I contacted this very famous philanthropist in Rhode Island. Like, he's probably not famous all over the world, but he's famous there. And I contacted him and started talking to him about philanthropy, because I mean, I think that is a big direction where we're going as a society. And I mean, this is one of the things that I want to do moving forward too. It's, because my perception of philanthropy, and, this is debatable to some degree, but basically my perception of it is when it's not just throwing money at a problem, like you were talking about, like, changing the laws, that can have a lasting impact. And, right now the word sustainable is so popular because it needs to be, because we haven't been doing anything sustainably in any way, shape, or form for thousands of years. So it's like, now we have to do things sustainably. And we understand that throwing money at a problem, while it might be necessary in the very beginning every once in a while, it doesn't create lasting change. It just creates people dependent on people throwing money at them.
Well, it's hard to even know where your money's going. Is it going for meetings and lunches for meetings and things like that?
Right. And of course you have that aspect, right? So I mean, my philanthropy projects are always going to be if there's a problem, I want to see how in the solving of it, it's never a problem in that area ever again. It's sustainable, and it actually eliminates the problem forever. That's the projects that I think, that, you, me, and a lot of other people we're going to be seeing that a lot more on a global scale,
Effective altruism.
There you go. And, there's some, I can send you the name of the charity that I worked with for a while when I released my book, because I had the same mentality when I released my book. And I worked with this charity for a little while, and they have a specific benefactor that pays for all of their needs, like everything, office space, paperwork, to run it, everything to run it, salaries, everything. So they have a benefactor that pays for everything to run it. So 100% of their money goes straight into the projects that they're running, and I'm like, ooh, okay. And it's cool that we have we actually have charities out there like that, because I mean, before you start looking into charities and you find you find out 30 cents on the dollar is going to the problem or less, So now they actually monitor these charities a lot. And if you look into them and research them, which I did, you can find these charities that, sometimes it's 90%, sometimes it's even 100% of whatever's donated goes directly to a problem. And the one I was involved in also, it was in the philanthropic mentality, where they were getting the locals involved and creating a sustainable long-term solution. So they're out there.
Yeah. Share it with me. I bet your listeners would want to know more about that too.
Yeah, I'll have to. I believe it was Outreach International. I'm like 99% sure that was it. But like I said, my brain doesn't always work when I'm in the flow. That's why I pause before I say anything that's like specific, because I'm like, oh, I don't know. But yeah, I think it was Outreach International. But yeah, it's, and I'll try to put a link into the description here too. But so what else we got? We balance.
Well, I was saying, because you don't usually talk about psychedelics with your listeners, maybe that we should go back and do a bit of a disclaimer.
It's, well, I think that, I mean, we touched on it a little bit, whereas you took psychedelics recreationally, and that's part of your story, and that's certainly going to be in your book, which I don't think it needs technically a disclaimer, because it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, what they're going to, if somebody is against doing psychedelics recreationally, then one, they're probably not going to buy your book, but two, like, they probably should buy your book, because maybe it'll open their mind, and not like, just because you did it that way. Like, I didn't do it your way,
Right.
I did it
I'm
completely,
not endorsing
but
that.
there's no judgment,
Yeah.
So maybe if somebody does feel like they have a little judgment about doing psychedelics recreationally, maybe they should read your book so they can expand their mind a little bit and learn not to judge.
Well,
different
and
doorways
in moderation, Admittedly, I was using them a lot, but also there are other benefits that. So even though you don't have a psychedelic experience, it's proven that they permanently alter your openness personality trait. So they permanently make you more open-minded, open to new opportunities or new situations, to where, yeah, those are the travelers, the artists, the creatives a lot of times,
Right. Yeah, and I think too, with the specifically the plant and animal versions as opposed to the man-made stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of health benefits. With a lot of them boost your immune system, and there's other health benefits too. I mean, I'm not a specialist on it, but
yeah, and most of what I'm hearing is people talking about psychedelics from a more clinical standpoint, from a health standpoint. I am the odd one out right now talking about them recreationally, but it's in a fun, entertaining narrative,
Right. And I think that's, like, I mean, I'm looking forward to reading your book, but like, for me, I think people are addicted to information too much right now, in the spirit, well, everywhere, but in the spiritual community also. It's like, with integration of what you're learning is so important. And we listen to 32 podcasts, and we read 52 books, and we watch 16 freaking movie things. And it's like, we're constantly taking in information. We're not implementing it enough. We're not integrating it into our lives enough. And I think that, like, so for me, I got to a point where I don't really take in a lot of new information. Like, I get the spiritual stuff. For me, it's like, why would a mechanic read a book on how to rebuild an alternator if he already knows?
Yeah, it gets to be overload.
Right. So, I mean, and I took in a lot of information for many years. And I mean, I still have a book going and I still watch some stuff. And, but this is my whole life. Spirituality is my whole life. So I'm constantly talking about it. I'm constantly immersed in it. So what I did several years ago is I started getting books that were more stories. Now, my interest is spirituality. So I like spiritual stories. But I don't have to be learning all the time, you know? And I think so, like.
And I mean, a good story, you will have some takeaways, you know?
Absolutely. And I think that that's why, you know, that's one of the reasons why me personally, I'm looking forward to reading your book, because it's right in alignment with the types of books that I like reading. They're stories, and yeah, they have some spiritual topics sprinkled in there and some growth happening. And that's cool because that's my thing. But like, you know, but it's a story and it's, you know, an adventure. Like,
exactly.
Take me on a damn adventure. I want an adventure.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
It's a call to adventure.
Yes. Yeah. Not only take me on an adventure, show me what your adventure was like, and I get inspired to go on my own adventure and, you know, and do it my way. And yeah, have some takeaways. So, you know, I think it's great. And I think that a lot of people listening, it's funny because, you know, what do? I put out content, right? I put out podcasts, I write blogs, I put out a book, and I can't count how many times that I've told people, stop reading books, stop listening to podcasts. Like, you know, at least pick one teacher or maybe two teachers the most. And I've had a conversation with my friends about this that have thought the same way. Like, pick one teacher or maybe two and just focus on that and implementing it. Instead, where, you know, well, this one, Deepak said this and Tolle said this, and, you know, Joe Dispenza told me to do this. And, you know, like, and we're getting input from 32,000 different directions. And it's like, and we're just juggling it all, and we're navigating our way around staying stuck.
Yes. And as I'm starting to launch the book, you know, I'm listening to more and more psychedelic podcasts and reaching out, and we'll be promoting my book in various channels. But also I'm like taking in all this information and thinking about what I'm going to say. And I realize, like, planning, you're better off just trusting. And this is one of the main, you know, lessons in my book is like, you can plan all you want. You can think you're going to have something fun to say or try to remember that information to regurgitate it later to sound smart or witty or whatever. But honestly, you may never use it again. And it's better just to trust and see what comes through. Kind of how you run your show of just channeling and, talking about whatever comes through.
Yeah, and it's relaxed. And I mean, I know that I'm very specific in what I do, and like, and I use it for my business and all this stuff. But like, I'm not as unique as people think. Like, we all do this. Like, you know, you're seeing it. It's like we all can trust and go with the flow. Everybody's done that in their life to some degree, you know. So it doesn't take, you know, like, it's just sometimes when people find out the way that I work, they think like, oh, well, that's Glenn, and Glenn opened up spiritually in that way, and that's how he functions. And while there might be a little bit of truth to that, there's not much truth to it. It's like we all function this way if we open. We all read energy way better than we realize. Even people who don't consider themselves spiritual. You know, like I use my father as an example of that all the time. My father doesn't consider himself spiritual, and you know, but like when we have conversation, but he was very effective in life. He succeeded in a lot of areas in life. And when we're talking about life, he's like, oh yeah, like this, you know, and like that, and like that. And I'm sitting, and he's hearing like logical, intellectual solutions that work, and I'm hearing spirituality, you know, because they're the same thing. That's interesting.
Yep, flow.
It's all about the flow. So, well, we flew through another one. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up?
No, feels complete.
Feels complete. It does. It feels complete. That was perfectly said. So, so good thing we did a second one. We don't have to do a third one.
Yeah, we were incomplete.
Yeah, we're incomplete. Now we're complete.
Yay.
All
Well,
right,
thanks
perfect.
so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Good luck with everything in the book. Of course, stay in touch. And
yeah, I'm going to send one your way.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yay.
I got one book going. I'm going to make sure I wrap up before yours gets here.
Yep. And people can find me on Heart First Series, heartfirstseries.com. And that's my handle on all my social media. So
Sweet.
follow me there.
And do you know where you're going to be selling it yet?
It'll be on Amazon to start, and then I'm going to the premier Psychedelic and Wellness Conference in Las Vegas on November 5th and 6th, and it's called Meetdelic. That will kick off my kind of book tour. So I will be in the U.S. touring a bit with the book, so that will be exciting.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, there you go, people. Like, I think you get an idea of Michelle's energy, like, during these podcasts, of course, because they're authentic and this is what comes out. But it was cool because you were traveling when I was in Florida. So we got to actually meet in person, and which is cool. And your energy is even better in person. So if you can go out there and meet her, I highly suggest it.
Well, it's just interesting because that's a perfect example of just putting yourself out there and meeting and not knowing where it's going to lead. But here we are now.
Here we are now, years later, doing a podcast to release your book.
Yes.
Wow. We never could have guessed that back then.
Thanks so much.
My pleasure. All right. Let me see if I can figure out how to end this thing.
All right. Be well, everyone.
Take care, Michelle.
Bye.
Looking for more? Check out over 200 episodes of Life Lessons and Laughter, or click the link in the description of this episode to connect with Glenn directly.